Hello, beloved stars. I'm Courtney, host of Stars of the Morning Light, and I am live. And I see that Shelly is in the chat. Good to see you, my dear. I have not been live in quite a long time. I mean, I think a month. So I hope everyone is well. It is October 30th of 2025. Happy Halloween, everybody. Halloween is tomorrow. Be safe, have fun, do as you wish. We are in Light or Earth Changes, one of Edgar Cayce's resource materials. So, beloveds, the last Edgar Cayce was actually about his bio. In the description, there should be a link to the Edgar Cayce Life Skills Studies playlist. Please, please, please utilize that. You'll be able to catch up with his bio where we are, and we have gone through some of his resource materials. I know we've gone through the reincarnation material, so please utilize it. We have done, I think, only one or two videos about Earth changes. This context, this material, this resource book is very dense. I wanted to use that word. Because it's just readings. It's just recorded readings. There's no other authors that are trying to make sense of it. There's no commentary in any way. It is just readings. So, with that being said, the Akashic, they're very matter of fact. They are very dense. They talk in very conceptualized ideas while also very black and white. It's wild. So this materials is big. Like the sentence we're going to start off with tonight. I'm going to be jumping back and forth. So I'm going to read this sentence, and this is from reading 182-2, April 9th, 1925. And it's just a little brief excerpt from it. And the last sentence here in this excerpt says, in the personality exhibited in the present, the ever fear in the deep recesses of self of destruction coming to many suddenly. So let me put that in today's words. Let me put that into context. And I wanted to start off with that. So how many of you in the past, I don't know, decade or so, within you, for some reason, you feel like something's coming, something destructive, something big and scary, big cataclysm of some sort. How many of you have felt that? So, and there's no real evidence to pinpoint like, yes, this is going to definitely happen. But how many of you have felt that way? Like something's coming. Some kind of destruction is going on. Well, they just said that. They just said in this personality exhibited. So they're talking about one individual, but this actually goes when they end it with many experiences exhibited in the present. So 1925, even that turn of the century. The ever fear in the deep recesses of self, of destruction coming to many suddenly. Isn't that wild? So the Akashic right there, people were feeling it in the 20s. People are feeling it again now. Why is that? Why do you think that is? We're going to be talking about it tonight. So settle in, everybody. I am live, so I occasionally do hang out with those in the chat. And we are covering Earth changes, the beasts of the land, the Congress that was trying to take care of it, And why do we all have this feeling within us that something big could happen suddenly? All right, beloved, settle in. Shelley is referring to her computer is spinning and spinning. Dear Shelley, the weather is shifting in the north here, um, the northern hemisphere, to the point that I, in northern Georgia, am considering turning on the heat. And poor Miss Shelley has been getting snow. So if your computer is not up to snuff, well, we have compassion for all things, real or technology. All right, folks. So I am going to go back to where we left off. I'm just going to read it. Please utilize the playlist. The thumbnails of these videos, of these live streams and or videos, will tell you what it is. Is it about reincarnation? Is it about his biography? Is it about earth changes? So please utilize it. I'm going to read where we left off, and then I'm going to keep going. So this was a reading in 1925. So this is reading 5748-3, June 1st, 1925. This was the question asked. Will you have, this was the question. Okay. You will have before you the reading given on the psychic work of Edgar Cayce, present in this room on the afternoon of May 28th, 2025. Oh, sorry, 1925. Oh, how weird. Did I just do that? And you will continue with this reading regarding the information of the first laws concerning man's relation to higher forces, giving this in an outline manner and how this was given to people. So the question really is like, hey, from a previous reading that we are going back and looking at, can you elaborate on man's relation to higher forces, and how this information was given to us, how the connection was given to us? Okay. And this is from the Akashic. Yes. We have the information as given and the conditions as surrounding the giving of the first laws, as regarding the indwelling of higher forces in the earth's plane, and man attempting to make application of the same. Now, as we see, we have the general outline of those conditions of man in the earth plane at the period or age, as is judged from man's viewpoint of this gathering as caused by the second ruler of the peoples that dwelled in the portion of the earth's plane now known as Egypt. Once again, beloveds, please utilize the playlist in the description. I've already covered this portion of the reading. There is to be considered now as those conditions under which man, as man, lived during that period in the various spheres in which man dwelt. In that land, we find that the peoples comparatively free from the invasion of the beasts of the field, save those as were being used for man's development and for the use of man as servant or as man's beast of burden. While we find in the now Tibetan country, then the land of many waters, the indwelling of those of many beasts, whom man had to defend self against. Again, in the Mongolian region, many others of the species and nature that were destructive to man's indwelling in many ways. And then you start listing areas. We can kind of imagine from there. Many beasts and many conditions. And man then was in the way of having a different understanding, for different conditions were to be met, as were also in the southern portion. Same as how I just spoke about in the northern hemisphere now, our weather is shifting. Those are conditions. Conditions I'm not used to that I have to turn my heat on living in northern Georgia, the state of Georgia, where it should be warm October 30th, and I have to turn on heat. We always have to kind of face the conditions of our environment, of our surroundings, of our relations, what have you. That has never changed. Then, as these were gathered from the 5 nations, we find the subjects of those pertaining to the manifestations of the development of man and man's ability to cope with the conditions and the forces wherein man were given their supremacy over the other conditions in the earth's plane. And the first was given by the ruler, then the force that gives man in his weak state, as it were, the ability to subdue and overcome the great beasts that inhabit the plane of man's existence must come from a higher source. Hence the first law of self-preservation in the physical plane attributed to divine or higher forces. So, I'm briefly I gotta pause because you might be new to this. Take in what they just said. So the first law of self-preservation in the physical plane contributed to divine or higher forces. So first law, what we know that we have, if we are in these human bodies, what is in us that creates or holds, magnifies, helps us with self preservation. Many in today's world would refer to that as ego. That there's nothing wrong with the ego. It might be the first law. Put something in that meat suit that tells them, hey, that's a dangerous beast over there. Run, hide, fight. Put something in that meat suit that tells them, whoa, you're cold. And if you keep getting colder, you're going to die. Put something in that meat suit that helps them make decisions for survival. That is a good, healthy ego. That is a beautiful ego. Thank goodness we have an ego, or we wouldn't even be here. First law, self-preservation. Just as the elements aiding in the betterment of man's condition in the earth plane, we have then the remnants of that was taught. Hence began, as given, the study of the indwelling of that other than man's physical powers. Yet there were many men of giant stature to meet the conditions as seen. Yet the approach of that same force to some was reached through the power, heat, significance of sun's force, of moon's wave, of waters bringing forth all manners of organisms necessary for development in the plane. Then we have then we have the gathering together then of this group for the furthest places, 44. As we see, this number will run through many numbers, for as we find, there is the law pertaining to each and every element significant to man's existence, considered and given in one manner or form by the groups as gathered at this meeting. We are, and then they say we're through with this presentation, or we're through with this at present. Oh, the Akashic. We're done talking now. I've spoken about that many a times of how the Akashic will just, when they're done, they are done. I love it. So I am moving. Everybody. So that was pages 4 and 5. We have covered that. Please, like I said, go use the playlist. That was covered before. I mean, I talked about this group. We're fixing to go more into the group. I talked about the ego. I talked about the giant statures. I talked about all these things, the different elements, the different conditions, what have you. This has all been covered. So now we're moving from that to where we are tonight. And tonight we're on page 15 and 16. And that line that I opened up with is on page 17. So we're moving into this great Congress, this group that seemed to form. So the folks that were living in Egypt at this time, they had learned by their ruler how to subdue these beasts, how to use them for work, what to do with them. And the beasts were not so much within, like, probably their big city, their metropolitan city. But when you go to other parts of the earth, of these beautiful lands, they talked about Tibet, they talked about areas in South America, they talked about the Mongolian areas. There were beasts. And many, many ancient stories talk about the harsh conditions. There's the ancient stories of like the Aryan race, which is even before most ancient stuff most people know about, that lived on like the North Pole, and it was perfect and it was wonderful and it was great. And then all of a sudden something shifted and they had to migrate south and settled in the Persian area. And then they became like, well, they eventually became what Zoroaster was a part of, and then they became the Essene, and the Essene became like the Gnostic. Yeah, everybody's connected. So even in those ancient stories, there's stories about them meeting beasts that they have never met before. So one of the big topics of this great Congress, this group, and beloveds who have been with me for a while, and I see that Lori came in. Good to see you, my dear. For those who have been with me for a while, I have given many different talks about this group, this, you could say, galactic group, this group that they would meet, and the conversations then would be broadcasted. We're going to read about it. Wild. It's just broadcasted. There's a lot of things that they find here on this earth. Some of it, if it's buried that deep and purposely buried, I do believe we should just bury it again. Other things that we find, um, stone structures, heads, what have you, sculptures, forms of communication. Beloveds, I am trying to give more information to what's here. So let's go to the reading 262-39, February 21st, 1933. And if you're new here to Stars of Morning Light, welcome in. The reason we started doing this was to bring what Edgar was saying and helping the world with 100 years ago. We're bringing it up 100 years to now, to this turn of the century, putting a little bit more clarity to what's what still holds, what's still gonna happen, what's true, what's not true, and breaking things down a little bit more because we've experienced more. We've dug more stuff up. We have found more tablets. We have found all sorts of things, right? So that is the whole purpose for the Edgar Cayce Life Skills Studies and going through his biography to bring humanity back to the sleeping prophet who was a man first. So, rating 262 39, February 21, 1933. This is the question. Please advise me regarding the preparation and presentation of the article or story which I am preparing on the Great Congress held during the age of the destruction of the enormous animals that once roamed the earth. And I do believe this was Hugh, his son, asking for this information. He was trying to put some stuff together, especially about Atlantis and this great Congress and these animals, these enormous animals. So this is the answer. In the period when this became necessary, in the period where this became necessary, like the beasts of the land and humans were no longer able to jive together. This is becoming a problem. And beloveds, maybe one episode we'll get into the beasts. Are they dinosaurs? Are they just what we know of prehistoric beasts? What are these beasts really? But tonight, we're going to be talking about this Congress and man, and then how the higher forces, multiple different kinds of higher forces, made some decisions. In the period when this became necessary, there was the conscience raised in the minds of the groups in various portions of the earth, much in the manner as would be illustrated by the all world broadcast in the present day of the menace in any one particular point or in many particular points. So they're referencing the broadcast of today in 1933, radio, right? They also broadcasted and talked about things way, 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 way back. And the menace is these beasts. And the gathering of those that heeded, as would be the scientific minds of the present day, and the devising ways and means of doing away with that particular kind or class of menace. So all the brilliant minds of that time were gathering together because their conscience raised enough to go, wait a minute, the first law, which is my ego, self safety. Well, I can't even think of the word now. Preservation. We're thinking about all this stuff. It's not just act. It's not just act and react, act and react, act and react. Our consciousness has evolved enough to go, whoa, we got to do something about this. I'm sure we can. So all the great minds of the lands, and there was a representative. There really was. There was like one or two representatives, how we still do it today, to represent groups. As to the manner in which these gathered, it was very much as would be the graph. Now, in quotate or parentheses here, I should say, it says Graf Zeppelin, question mark. The Akashic just said Graf. I think Hugh wrote in Graf Zeppelin. To start to the various portions for those that represent it, and were to gather those that were to counsel, or were to cooperate in that effort. And as this, then, was in that particular plane or sphere that then was in the land which has long since lost its identity, except in the inner thought or visions of those that have returned or returning to the present fear. So they are trying to say everything we're talking about right now, this is so long ago that it has lost its identity. No one can really break down and describe what Atlantis really is or what the world was back then. All of it. No one can do that. But then they said, except in the inner thought or visions of those that have returned or are returning in the present sphere, the ways and means devised were as those that were altered or changed. Let me pause. So, those beloved incarnated souls reincarnating in Edgar Cayce's time, probably reincarnated right now, they might have memories, feelings, thoughts, more detailed thoughts when they're kind of sitting there talking with their buddies about Atlantis or ancient worlds, or, can you imagine what it'd be like to not know what fire is and then know what fire is, that sort of thing. They might have a bit more dialogue and thoughts about it and visions about it. But other than that, it has long been gone. The ways and means devised were were as those that would alter or change the inversions for which those beasts were needed, or that necessary for their sustainability in the particular portions of the spheres. Sorry, guys, I'm starting to get my tongue all twisted. Or Earth that they occupied at the time. The reason I started stumbling there is they keep talking about. Sorry, beloveds, I was stumbling because I was also thinking. Um, the Akashic keeps referencing in that portion of the plane, or in that earth, or in that sphere. That might be difficult for folks. So let's let's try to sum that up real quick for our today's awareness, at least the bit that we're at of like the multiverse. I mean, they're talking about that. So they're also at the same time, in reference to that, they're trying to say who we're talking to right now, people are probably returning, right? But they're also at the same time saying this is happening over here because time is fluid. It's not linear. Like this is happening, but also in your sphere, your little sphere of the multiverse, you're returning to what's already happened, but it's happening over here as well. So reading it out loud to you is maybe a little bit difficult in putting those words together, but let's just sum it up and take it how your mind wants to take it, how your conscious wants to take it in. Let's just sum up that whenever you hear the Akashic talk about the portion of the land or the earth, or, well, the portion of land we can reference like our earth. But when they're talking about or which plane or which sphere, because there's different planes and there's different spheres. All within the multiverse. So let's just take what we got and roll with it, right, beloveds? Yes, because that's not tonight's message, but I just realized I repeated that kind of wording like a few times, and I went, "Oh goodness." So that's where I started stumbling. And I see that Robert came in. Good to see you, Milky Way Soul Tribe. Good to see you, sir. Um, so let me sorry. It's good. Happy Thursday night, everybody. Um, yes, because it'll even say, particular portions of the sphere or earth that they occupied at the time. And this was administered much in the same way or manner as were there sent out from various central plants, that which is termed so the broadcast. Okay, beloveds, the great Congress gets together. It is broadcast. And they can also use what they plan to do with these beasts of the land, also from these central plants. That is the terms that the Akashic is using, a central plant. Well, we call our nuclear power plants. It's the same jazz. So let me read. Okay. And this was administered much in the same way or manner as were there sent out from various central plants, that which is termed in the present 1933 the death ray, or the supercosmic ray, that which many are seeking, into which will give their lives much, from the stratosphere, or cosmic rays, that will be found in the next 25 years. This presented then in such a manner and drawing upon the variety conditions that existed in the various portions of the land then occupied by man. So not only does this great Congress meet of all the good minds, all the great minds of the different groups, especially those dealing with the beasts, because these beasts were pretty much first on, the list of things to talk about, first on the table. Well, what are we going to do with these beasts? So information would be broadcasted out, but these plants could also use the technology to transmit the communication, much like how you're watching me right now. And then, but it wasn't like technology in that form. It's sometimes these structures that we are digging up and finding, these statues and whatnot, that would then replay, give the information, broadcast it. Now, these plants that could send out death rays, cosmic rays, all these rays, right? And I find it interesting that the Akashic then said, that which many are seeking, into which will give their lives much. That is a whole and this is why I'm saying, when you get readings from the Akashic and it's just someone recording what is being said, my goodness, they then jump to a whole different category of of what they're talking about there. They're talking about us and radiation. That's fine. Us and light. That's fine. Has nothing to do with the beasts of the land. That's what kind of goes on with the Akashic. They're going to give you everything. It's up to the person that is the messenger to go, that's for another time. Then the question was asked, what was the date BC of this gathering? Answer, 50,722. So 50,722 BC was this gathering. And I will tell you, once again, beloveds, of this sphere, of this plane that they are discussing. So when we talk about dates, This is where you get the Mandela effect of, well, where are we pulling the energy information from? What sphere? What plane? And then Hugh asked, were there any outstanding methods of destruction developed which I have not mentioned? And the Akashic said, draw on these that we have given here. So the super cosmic ray, the death ray, all of it. So then we're going to keep going, folks. Page 16. This is a reading 5249-1, June 12th, 1944. So 10 years later, I believe. Yep, 10 years later. And the background to this is reading given to a 24-year-old male who was told that he had once had a lifetime during the animal crisis that had brought much of the civilized world together. So we were changing, we were evolving, we were growing, we were creating, we were coming together, building civilization. And then once again, conscious had risen enough for us to go, wait a minute, these beasts, we cannot keep fighting with these. And look what Egypt did. They've subdued them, they use them for work. They're not even having a problem anymore. How do we do that? Let's all come together and talk about this. Great Congress, transmitting the information across the board. It was a big topic, big, huge thing. So this is a reading from a young man that was present at that time. As to the experiences in the Atlantean land, the entity, so this entity was the timekeeper for those who were called things, or the servants, or the workers of the peoples, and the entity felt lated and manifest as in the present, and wanting to reform, to change things, so that every individual soul had the right to freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of freedom from activity. Beloveds, did you hear that? And I see that Scotty came in. Good to see you. Beloveds, did you hear that? This young man who was a keeper of those who are called things, or the servants, or the workers of the peoples. And this man felt latent and manifest, meaning demonstrated, right? We might use, he was feeling a bunch of stuff and demonstrating it, as in the present. The wanting to reform, to change things, so that every individual soul had the right to freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of activity. For to the entity, even in those periods of man's unfoldment, for this was before Adam, the entity found during its activities the desire to improve, to make better those aversions for the workers of that period. That alone brought into the entity's consciousness man's position, the need of a pattern. And the entity felt the need of God's hand in what evil or Satan had brought in the earth. Don't forget that. Whatever may be thy position in this present existence, through the experience the entity gained. I'll read that for you. Through the experience you gain. So before I continue to read, so I already had to kind of say the whole thing about like, hey, there's different planes, different spheres, different, not every, things are happening simultaneously, but even though we live in linear, right? We experience the linear. This just said before Adam. This goes back to the when Hugh asked, and what time did this Congress have these big meetings? And they said, before Christ, right? They said 5,722 or 50,000, right? 722. Beloveds, this is before what everybody out there is thinking of this so called Adam as the first creation. So I love everybody. And I've had this conversation for many a times over. There have been many cycle endings and beginnings, right? We are of regeneration, and it's amazing. And that's why the earth is great. She's never been completely destroyed because she is the first that is the representation of regeneration, and it's magnificent. And that is why she is a hot commodity for everybody. Everybody wants her, right? And we, these beautiful human body forms, are also the most amazing representation of that. So, with that being said, there have been many cycles of long stretches of time period, ending and beginning, ending and beginning. Um, some might call it the destruction of Atlantis, ending and beginning. Some might call it the Great Flood, ending and forgiving, or forgiving. I did have to forgive that, by the way. um, it always happens. So when we're talking numbers, even if it says 50,722 BC, that could be a BC of a completely different cycle than the cycle we're living in now. Did that make sense? A cycle is when a cycle ends and begins again. When a full cycle is an ending, that is a full, when people want to talk about reboot, restart, what have you, that is a full, the computer has been unplugged for quite a while. You plug it back in, nothing is remembered. Everything is new. But yet we do the same thing over and over and over again. I believe we can do it differently this time. That's why we're here. That's why all you beautiful souls are here. So when they're talking about this stuff, right here, this is apparently before Adam. This man is living in a Atlantean land, and he is feeling that the those who were called things or servants or the workers of the people. This is also related to the Sumerian texts when people are created for gold to just dig things. So this beloved being, this man, the keeper of those, was catching all sorts of feelings, thinking, hey, there's got to be a soul in there. There's got to be a consciousness in there. Yep, because they work really well. There's got to be a consciousness. Why don't we try to give them freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of activity? In the experience which followed this, we find the entity was in the Indian land, or in those periods of Sad, as a leader, the ruler. The entity was then that would be called the Secretary of State, or in the inner group of the leader Sad. that made for more contacts or associations with or agreements with other lands. The entity then was among those who were of that group, who gathered to rid the earth of the enormous animals which overran the earth. So this guy who had feelings, he's looking around not just at the people that he's a keeper of, but how these animals are affecting everything, these enormous beasts of the land. So he has risen in authority, in power, in hopefully awareness and consciousness at the same time. And he is one of those brilliant minds that is a part of the great Congress that comes together to figure out, how do we remove these beasts? How do we get rid of these beasts? And let's keep reading. No, actually, not keep reading, because we're going to talk about what then happened. They are making this decision to, from those central plants, to use what we refer to as a death ray, a cosmic ray, to start wiping these animals out, right? They're going to start wiping these animals out. Fascinating. Let's keep reading. But ice, the entity found, nature, God, changed the poles, and the animals were destroyed, though man attempted in that activity of the meetings. Take that in, everybody. I'm going to read this last paragraph, okay? Now, take that in. That we just learned that the Congress was going to use cosmic rays to try to blast away these huge, enormous beasts of the land. The entity then was among those who were of that group, who gathered to rid the earth of the enormous animals which overran the earth. But ice, the entity found, nature, God, changed the poles, and there are commas between all that. It's red, but ice, comma. The entity found, comma. Nature, comma. God, comma. Changed the poles, and the animals were destroyed, though man attempted it in that activity of the meetings. Hmm. So maybe man should not just start blasting cosmic rays from different central points on this planet. And we're kind of where we started. In the personality exhibited, in the present, in your personality that you exhibit, in the present, ask yourself, is there ever fear in the deep recesses of self, of destruction coming to many suddenly? In your personality that you exhibit in the present, do you experience that? That feeling of something's coming, something's coming. Like it just never goes away. It's bigger than the shoe might drop, right? It's bigger than, you know, always thinking that something negative is going to happen. It's this deep, deep within you. Something that can take us all out in a heartbeat. It's coming. If you have that, if you have that feeling, beloveds, it is most likely because you were there. When they started blasting, ice, the entity found, nature, God changed the poles. Isn't this fascinating? Something that big does not go away from your consciousness. That beautiful soul that is just traveling and doing and being and going into all the experiences. Yay! Is not going to forget something that big. That is going to be one of the biggest, I don't know, roots of our doubt, our hesitation, our fear, everything that blocks us. I will guarantee if you experience that, it's going to be it's going to be the seed that grew the tree. So maybe maybe meditate and ask yourself, do I have that feeling? It's not like I said, just, bad things are going to happen. I mean, this, we all know if we have this. And if you do, we forgive them for they know not what they do. We forgive us for we know not what we do. Love, compassion. We surround that seed of what we experienced with knowing that we are safe now and we forgive all that happened. Right? Yes. Yes. So, beloveds, I hope you had a great time in the chat. You know what? Because some people are here and I got, a few minutes left. I went to the eye doctor the other day. This is kind of Edgar Cayce. Well, it's more about his bio. So oftentimes with his bio, and the reason I'm thinking about this is I'm looking at the chat right here and I'm like, ooh, that's kind of blurry. So I finally went to the eye doctor. The last time I went to the eye doctor was 1989. So it's been a while. Um, I found out some fascinating stuff about how my eyes work. Very fascinating. So this might be a little fun little tidbit. And I'm wondering if this is the science behind being a seer. So any scientists out there, maybe you want to do some studies. Um, and when I say this is kind of apropos to the Edgar Cayce stuff, is that when we are in Edgar Cayce's bio, I usually compare and contrast his life and mine, and especially the physical makeups of head injuries, aspects like that, that could contribute to being able to communicate with the Akashic, right? Be a messenger of the Akashic. I, though, the only titles I've ever given myself is messenger and or seer, because I'm a seer before anything else. The Akashic actually presents everything to me more in visuals, and then I have to have the conversation to go, what am I looking at here? Right? Because I'm a seer first. I've always been. So find out this is a little interesting. So just Tuesday, I go to the eye doctor because I was a little bit worried about my sight. I just need a little bit of corrective glasses for reading, nothing big. I'm just getting older, happens to the best of us, and hopefully I will be able to correct it. Um, but I found out some interesting stuff that I'm sure in 1989 they didn't even have the the capability of testing for it. So I knew I had astigmatism. And the way the doctor presented that, I don't really have a ball in front of me, but they held up like a squishy ball. And so most people's eyes are just completely round. You have a round eyeball. Good. You should. And then she squished the ball down on both sides. And she said, that's how what your eyes are like. So my eyes are not round. They're squished. They're squished. So I knew that as a child. That beloved doctor in 1989 said that my eyes were not round, they were oval. And as a little kid, my first thought was, ooh, I have Egyptian eyes. How cool is that? Very different that being all grown and they're like, this is your eye, and they squish it down. That didn't make me feel too good, but that's okay. Um, but then I learned something fascinating of how my eyes take in light. So apparently, most other people, the majority, y'all take in light. So everything is light. How you see me because of light, right? We've learned this many a times over at Stars of Morning Light. Um, Everything, all matter and material, everything in creation that you see, feel, touch, experience is because of the light that is projecting, right? The light projects in, we create the image, we understand what's going on. So, this is interesting. This might be the science about around being a seer. Who knows? Come on, scientists. Come on. You can get the ball rolling. So, everybody else, the light, like a beam of that image. I mean, take like a box of top stuffing. We all know what that box looks like, right? We all know what that box looks like. You all would look at the box and the image, the light of that would go into the center of your eye and it kind of crosses and there you go. The image is formed. You know that it is a box of stovetop stuffing. Awesome. That's not what light does with my eyes. Apparently, absolutely zero, because I even double checked with the doctor, zero light enters the center of my eye. Somehow, with my little squished eyeballs, somehow, if I'm seeing an image before it even comes near my eye, I split the light, I split the beam of light, and it goes in the sides of my eyes. So I'm basically splitting what you would see as a solid beam of light. I split it 4 ways, and then I put it through the sides of my eyes. Yep. Yeah, this was a little Tuesday night got a little weird, folks, in my own head. I ain't gonna lie, because this I ain't never heard this. And apparently, so on my left eye, like, the area by my nose on both sides is pretty much right in the middle of the where the whites are, the stream goes in, it goes in at an angle. So the light goes in as an angle, not straight on. I not only split all the light into 4, I then also, I don't know, start curving it, start moving it around. The whites by my nostrils, it comes in the side and pretty much right in between. And pretty much right in between on my left eye, like right in between where the white would be. But on my right eye, apparently, I let that light come in way I where the eyelid is, I mean, the eyelid's damn near covering it, like way at the recess of the eyelid is where I'm like, okay, stream of light, you go in this way. I'm telling y'all. So when a seer says they just saw something out of the corner of their eye, I did. It's there. Think about this scientifically. I really truly wonder if this is the physical scientific I just like more evidence of how a seer's literally our eyes work differently. I can see what others can't. In the daylight, in the dark, and I came home telling Brad this, and Brad, my husband, he was just like, "Oh my goodness," because my entire life I've said I see better in the dark. Probably because there's so much light in this place. Um, I like sitting in the dark as a reprieve. There's so much light, and it's getting harder and harder because it's not natural light. Me and natural light, oh, we are best friends. All this LED, HD, whatever D is becoming very difficult. So I do wonder though, so let me know in the comments what you think, because apparently that's how my eyes work. The doctor said there is no change in it. I came here that way. And something in my consciousness, in my mind, in my body of form operation, before that light even enters my eyes, I split it really into four streams in a way to then curve them to have them go into my eyes at an angle. Truly, I am seeing two worlds at once, two streams at once. So, I don't know. I figured you guys might find that interesting because those that have been with Stars of Morning Light for a while know me as a seer. It's the only term I really ever used on myself because that's been my gift always and other things. But as far as even in my telepathy, it's sight. I'm not reading your thoughts, I'm seeing your thoughts. So, you gotta wonder, what am I doing with all that light? Hmm. Let me know what you think in the comments. I figured Lucky would like that one. Lucky would think that was interesting. Let me know if you find that interesting. Oh, Shelly. See, and Shelly just went to the eye doctor and she just said, I I have to have prisms put into my new glasses to stop seeing two things at one time. Oh, Shelly, maybe you're developing the sight of, developing new eyes. It's so funny too, because as long as I've been teaching things, I always would tell students, when they're developing their spiritual gifts, put on your new set of glasses, put on your new eyes, even if you're going to be in observer mode. It's like looking at things in a different way. Make that choice for a pocket of time to practice. I always said, putting on new glasses, seeing things differently. Shelly, I wonder if you're truly starting to see things differently. Yes. Yes. New eyes. Yeah. Well, you need prisms to not see things all at once. That's fascinating. Hmm, fascinating, fascinating. And Shelley, I don't think it was like that before. You are developing new eyes, my dear. Oh, joy and greatness to you. How exciting. All right, beloveds, Scotty Boy, Robert, Lori, Shelly, thank you for coming in. This has been a fun live together. It's been great to be with one another. And yeah, happy times. Happy Halloween, everybody. Do enjoy. Be safe. If you're only doing scary movies and popcorn, rock out with your bad self. I love you guys. Bye.